I was a CNA before I was a psychologist. Long before that, I was a child who needed help, who needed support, who grew up in the hood and had a lot going on. So being transparent and letting you into my world a little bit, as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as a sister, I've gone through so much, which is why I decided to start this. I work with populations, some of the most sensitive populations, and I need to reach the masses. Being able to see and work with one person at a time is amazing. I'm glad I'm making a change, but I'm also seeing an influx of a lot of difficulties within our communities. Now, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and between St. Louis, it was there and the west side of Chicago. So I spent my summers there, grew up with my mom and dad. There was a lot going on as I was growing up. My mom and dad loved each other. I always say my dad was an amazing father. He wasn't the best husband. I saw things I wish I didn't see. He never put his hands on her, but there was a lot of verbal abuse. And that wasn't toward me, it was toward my mother. But that was very difficult for me to see. So growing up, I was very shy, quiet. I was bullied. And at one point, I did find my voice. When I was 12 years old, we moved from St. Louis to Illinois, and we moved with my sister. So it was a bunch of us in one house under one roof, and I was with my nieces and nephews. It was a very loving environment, but it was a lot going on, to say the least. When I ended up going to school in the south suburbs of Chicago, graduating in high school, that is where I really found who I was going to be. I kind of found my voice. And instead of me being that shy, quiet girl, I fought back. I was loud. I talked a lot, but it was a transition to help me overall find my voice. After high school, I knew I wanted to go to college because my dad always talked about it. He passed away when I was 16, but he did instill the power of education. And even though growing up, we were living in the hood, we did go to food pantries. There was a lot of struggle. There was also a lot of love. I will say that, and I'm grateful for it because that was the foundation which set the basis of who I am now. When looking at after post-secondary studies, I went to a community college, Prairie State College, and going to that community college, I decided I wanted to work as a CNA. Prior to that, I worked at Jewel Osco as a bagger. I worked in dietary for a nursing home. So making, I think around then, it was maybe $5, $6, $7. I don't remember. But I remember leaving Jewel Osco. They would not let me become a cashier for some reason. But I went to dietary. And working in the nursing home, I was around a lot of CNAs. And they would say, you should be a CNA. It pays the most money. Around then, it was $9, $10 an hour, which was definitely a lot of money. We're speaking a few years ago. But when I started working as a CNA, I started working double shifts. I was there often. And I remember some of the CNAs and nurses asking if I had kids. Around that time, I didn't have kids. I just got tired of not having, always asking, wanting better. So I had to work in order to get that. That meant working double, triple shifts sometimes. I worked for an agency and directly for a nursing home. So I was hustling young. And many of the nurses would say, you're going to become a nurse one day. And I always said, no, I never wanted to be a nurse. I was going to school initially for communications. Then I changed to psychology. And then I changed to communication again. So I was kind of all over the place at community college. But I remember they told me financial aid would not pay for me to be a CNA unless financial aid wouldn't cover it unless I was on a nursing path. So I switched at one point to the nursing path. No, I didn't want to be a nurse, but hey, I did want to make sure I was able to make money at that time. And what being a CNA taught me was humility. It taught me how to care about people deeply. Because if you don't know what a CNA is, look it up. But a CNA is someone who works directly with some of the most sensitive populations who are not able to help themselves or maybe need support. Some people needed total care, meaning they could not wash themselves, they could not feed themselves, and that's hard. And I was 18, 19 in this job, and I did it for 4 or 5 years through college. But that taught me how to really care about people. So that was the foundation of me as I became a psychologist. That really helped propel that. But working as a CNA, I worked in and out a lot of different places. I worked with a lot of different people who didn't like the job, but they just did it. And that taught me a lot about people and understanding how they respond, how they act. And I've even seen people try to mistreat people. And I was definitely always one, you see something, say something, speak up. I didn't care what anyone thought about what I said at that point. If you did something wrong, I definitely spoke about it. I told about it. And that's something that I don't think happens enough. No, I'm no longer in the realm of CNA, but I think those things still occur because it is a hard job. We didn't get paid enough for what we did. I remember one night working on a trach floor. If you know what a trach floor is, those are people who have difficulty breathing, so they have a trach here, and they were on ventilators. And I remember having, I want to say 26 to 30 people on the floor. It's supposed to be 4 or 5 CNAs to focus on maybe 4 or 5 people at a time. No, I remember having half the floor, and I remember one night no one else came in, so I had the whole floor, which is almost impossible. It's essentially impossible to care for each person the way they needed to be cared for. That was also why I didn't want to stay in nursing. I didn't want to stay in that field. I knew I wanted to help people. So upon having my child, my wonderful son, even in the womb, he was all over the place. I remember not being able to hold down any food. And my fear was, is he okay? Is he still in there? What's going on? And I remember going to an ultrasound appointment, maybe, 10, 12 weeks. And I was so terrified that I was losing him because there was no way someone could throw up this much and still be able to keep this kid. But I remember getting the ultrasound and the tech said, oh, I see why you can't keep anything down. He won't stop moving. He was busy, showing his hands waving, all of that. Technology was horrible, but we were still able to see that. And I remember at that point, my purpose was, okay, being able to keep him, take care of him, to make sure he was growing okay. And he came to the world perfect, amazing, healthy, full term. He was actually trying to stay in there. He didn't want to leave, but good birth, it happened. Now, a couple years after that, we were saying he was busy. He was active, very active, to the point where we couldn't let certain people keep him because we said, you can't catch him, so you can't keep him. He started walking at 10 months, and I don't even know if he walked. I remember he was flipping over the little baby gates and just started running. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to be a track star. He's not, but he still does some amazing stuff. But at that point, we felt that he was going to need a lot of eyes on him. And we're like, okay, he's a boy. He's active. He's all over the place. And I remember my husband's mom would say, oh, he was busy when he was a kid. So that's just what it was. It was a little more than that. I believe, I want to say around 3, he was released, a nice way of saying kicked out of his first daycare. They said he was too busy, couldn't keep up with him. Maybe someplace else may be more suitable. And I remember going to a daycare and I'm like, what do you mean? I had only part-time childcare because the first year of life he was with me. Then after that we had part-time because I was going to school. And when he was going to this school, they said, well, he would do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, he doesn't do that at home. So they allowed me to see on a 2-way mirror in the room. And I saw he was jumping around. He was just constantly moving. And I'm like, what's going on? Went in, corrected it, and he knew I was there. So he did respond differently. So in my mind, how can I support that? What needs to change? I was in college getting my bachelor's. So I wasn't necessarily done with school at that point, but I almost was. And my bachelor's, my undergraduate, is in communication sciences and disorders, which was to be a speech language pathologist. I loved communication. I was always told I spoke well. So I wanted to go into that realm. And I remember when I saw him respond that way, I delved into OT, which is sensory. Like, what are we feeding him? I just went through this rabbit hole of different avenues to try to support him. My husband was always on par, like, all right, what do we need to do? What's going on? Because we didn't know at that time, like, our kids just getting kicked out of daycare, what's happening? So the daycare he was going to was supportive, but there was still a lot of concerns. I was getting calls, and it just was annoying. The big pivotal shift was when he was 4 years old and I was pregnant and I was giving birth to my second child, my daughter. And the day we gave birth to her, I received the email, and I still have that email. The email stated there is something psychologically wrong with him and he cannot come back. That was the best and worst day at the same time. I literally looking at this tiny baby, and then I'm being told this by this school. And let's back up a little bit. This was a school. It was in University Park, Illinois. It was a private school. It's no longer a private school. It's shut down for some reason. I don't know. It wasn't me. But we went and met with that school prior to say, hey, he's busy. He's very smart from a young age, pushed communication, learning, ABCs, numbers, letters. He could identify animals, extremely smart. He took it all in. He was just busy. He was like to run. He liked to jump. And we just, in his room, we had a lot of little things like trampoline, things he can roll on. We just supported that. And when he was at that school, we met with him prior to. It was just us, mom, dad, and the teacher. And she said, oh, it's a small classroom. He'll be fine. We thought it would be great. I want to say he was there 4 days. And the fourth day, that's when that occurred. And my whole world was turned upside down because we then had to shift. My husband was at the hospital helping me, but he had to leave. He had to go get our son. And when he came back, I remember crying, this flush of emotions going through me. What do they mean? There's nothing wrong with him. And I've always had that shift. And I tell parents now, don't think what's wrong with your child. What do you need to do differently to support them? What do you need to change? And that was the first thing I was thinking. As difficult as it was, I remember holding him, crying. He fell asleep because he was 4. He fell asleep while I was in the bed with me. I remember looking in the incubator where our daughter was. And I'm like, what? We have 2 kids now. My husband was working. He was a truck driver. He was working 12 plus hour shifts. It was going to be me with these kids because at that point, where is he going to go? The most difficult time of my life. And I remember all of the tears. I remember all of the pleas to God. What do I do? What's happening? And definitely delving into what do I need to do to change? What do I need to research? How do I study? And I was also working for Indiana First Steps at that time. So I remember getting support. I was working very part-time for this speech therapist. So I was working as a communication specialist and developmental therapist. So with doing that, I reached out to every avenue, to every person in the village. I had an occupational therapist come home and come to my house and evaluate him. And I was going to pay her out of pocket. Did we have it? No, we definitely didn't have a lot of money, but that was our priority. I remember her saying he really didn't meet the delay. He knew a lot of things. When she told him to do certain things, he did it. It was one-on-one, but she said, I think it's just the environments. That's hard when you feel like you need answers and you don't get the answers that you want because you kind of want to fix it. And at that time, it was in a fix-it mindset. But now I understand it's not always how you fix it, it's how you navigate it. And what does that navigation look like? It looks differently for every single child. So that's why working in the field that I work in now, I understand it from a different realm for sure. But at that time, with him, I remember having this baby, the chillest baby. God was like, all right, we're going to do you a little one. I'm going to give you this chill baby. She always just had to be held. She did. She didn't cry as much, but she just always wanted to be held. He was still a runner. He was still all over the place. But we found another daycare for him to go to. And I believe it was 2 more that we had to go through before we found one. And it was Foundations for Advancement. And him being there, it definitely was helpful. It was a smaller environment. And I will say the schools he was at before were integrated. There were Black students, white students, but predominantly white. So when he went to this particular daycare, it wasn't a daycare school. It was definitely structured. It was smaller and it was more Black teachers. So I think that also helped with the support, seeing people that look like him and also being more strict. You have to sometimes be direct, be on top of it. And it's not saying snatch up, grab. It's not saying that. It's knowing and instilling in them what the expectations are and being consistent with those expectations. And sometimes it is your voice. It is the tone. It is the look. It is the proximity. Those things are extremely important, especially with brown and Black babies. I've seen that. I know it. This is just what it is. And that was helpful. But that is when I switched to psychology. I needed to have a clinical realm of understanding because he was going to transition to kindergarten at some point. Granted, his birthday is in September. Thankfully, he had another year to be able to kind of calm a little bit and learn more. But during that time, we also learned more about how to support him and learning from different avenues, different people. We had allergy tests for him. And at that time, oddly, he was allergic to peanuts. And he had EpiPen and all of that. But through some years down the line, we had another allergy test and he wasn't allergic anymore. So he started back eating it. But yes, for a few years, the test showed that he was highly allergic when he was younger. So we went toward every avenue. When he started kindergarten, we had purchased our first home in Indiana. And upon purchasing that home, we knew he was going to be at the public school. We wanted our kids to be rooted in a school and be there consistently because that's not what we had growing up. We moved. It wasn't traditional. It just was different. And we wanted roots. Again, I'm from St. Louis. Husband
grew up on the west side of Chicago, and things were difficult at times, but we wanted our kids to have consistency. In that consistency, we had to meet with the school. He had a behavior plan, kindergarten, first, second, third, around fourth grade that started to transition out. But the reason why it really transitioned for us was swimming. I say, and I'll die on this hill, swimming really helped support his energy levels. He was in a lot of different things. I did swimming with tots with him when he was younger. I did, what's it called? Gymnastics with him. He did soccer, and soccer was not it. But soccer was like, okay, he needs to run. He needs to move. Got it. But that was not the best avenue at all. Even though he was okay at it, he would pick up dandelions and we're like, run. And he just was like, it just like deer in headlights. And I remember one time they got awards at the end of the soccer season. And I'm not a give everyone a trophy mom. I was annoyed. I said, they weren't even that good. But that was the competitor in me. I needed him. If we're going to invest in something, I'm going to need you to be good at it. So I remember we were at a park and this lady was at the park. She was sitting across and she had a son who was running. He was really busy, but he was a little older than Cameron. And my son, they were playing and my son caught him and she was like, oh my God, no one really ever catches my son. He's extremely fast. How old is he? And I think at that time he was like 7 or 8. He was 8. And she said, is he in any sports? I'm like, oh, we're still looking for something. He does this ninja stuff. He does soccer here and there. She's like, have you ever thought of swimming? I'm like, swimming? No. We just weren't exposed to it growing up. I didn't think basketball would be good because you have to pay attention when they're bouncing the ball, all of that. So we ended up, she said, go to this place. This is where her son was a part of the team. We went. And we knew he knew how to like doggy paddle across the pool. And you do have to be able to swim 25 yards in order to join. And he was able to do that because I had him in swimming lessons when he was younger. Great thing. He made it and he was horrible. I mean, when he started, but he was in it. And I knew the sensory pressure, the input, the speed, all of those things that were going on were going to be helpful for him. And then he started to get fast, kind of quick. And I remember him saying, Mom, swimming is the only time someone is not trying to slow me down. Tears came and I said, this is it. We found our avenue. This is where we need to be. Then it flourished after that. He got fast. He got good. He started learning the strokes. He started to win. And that really propelled him through middle school. Now, I'm not saying we never saw anything. Him being a busybody, no, he didn't have a behavior plan after that. When he was in middle school, he did pretty okay. Academically, he was very smart. A whole nother issue is he fixates on stuff at times. He was an amazing avid reader. He would read so much to where he would try to take 2 and 3 books at library checkout. He would hide the book and just read whatever it is. So he was great at that. But he also went by the beat of his own drum. He wanted to do what he wanted to do, but never disrespectful. I will say that again. He was never disrespectful. The issues were he was just busy or wanted to do his own thing. Absolutely characteristics of ADHD. The way we were able to support his diet was very restrictive. Not saying that he couldn't have sugar, but there was on weekend cereals. He would not have that during school. We would not do a lot of the sugary drinks. And he had a very lean diet, which he has carried over into high school as a junior right now. He eats probably the best out of the house. He eats so much protein. He does drink protein shakes. He loves vegetables. He does not like sauce. He does not like he loves seasoning, and he has a varied diet. He eat a lot of food, but he just wants the meat. He wants the potatoes. He wants the rice. He watches a lot of bodybuilders and he takes that in, and knowing as a swimmer and as an athlete, that is really big for him. And he's been like that for the longest, but that has really helped transition into his health overall for himself when he's at school, when he's working out, everything he does. Now, with swimming, that helped alleviate a lot of the issues we were having. So getting him organized, that's a place where me and Dad struggle. When it comes to organization, we were heavy on communication, respect, getting things done, and he followed in that realm. But when it came to doing XYZ, 1, 2, 3, starting in high school, that was where it was the biggest struggle because you have to be very regimented, very organized. You have different teachers, different classes, and all the teachers, oh my God, he's great. He's very respectful. He says yes or no. But sometimes he'll just days off, or sometimes he may fall asleep. Now, when I say this, sleep is an issue, especially during swim season in high school. He would need to be up at 4:20, 4:30, out and at school in the pool by 5 a.m. Now, granted, that gave him all of the output he needed to be calm. But if you don't plan ahead, if you not or if you aren't asleep early enough, he also plays violin, piano. He's in Jack and Jill. He is a very busy kid because we believe in creating enriched lifestyles. But that enriched lifestyle definitely makes it where you have to plan. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And sometimes as adults, I realize that's where I'm still working, still growing. Even in this field, I'm growing in that way. But I became a school psychologist when he was younger in order to understand. And I got tired of people telling me this is what you need to do, or this is wrong, or this is what's going on. I decided to become more educated and learn on my own how to support my own children. That was the most important thing to me. And upon becoming a school psychologist, I was a school psychologist since 2014. In 2025, I became a licensed mental health counselor. So I do have a lot of education. I'm also a licensed principal. And I was a prior director of special education. I'm a business owner. We have a clinic and we contract with a lot of different school districts. So we have grown and flourished together as a family. But the basis, the foundation of that was built on being supportive to our own children, being able to provide that. Now, our daughter, she does great as well. She's a swimmer. They also play volleyball. Forgot about that. They also both do violin and piano. And there are times I have to stop and kind of check myself to say, she's doing things that he has done and she's great at those things too, but being able to help support her with finding her own avenue. We just have those two kids, but understanding that this platform is important, not only as a mother, but a contributing member to society who had to be able to advocate in a lot of situations for my own children. I became the person that I needed when I was a child, when I was a young mother, and transitioning into an advocate helps me help others. When I work with school districts, I always say, I'm not against you. I'm not a bully and I'm not trying to force you to do something that you shouldn't do. It is, what is our collective purpose? What is in the best interest of this child? How do they need support? And I've supported people where I've told the parents, hey, this is the school needs to help here, but there are some things you need to do at home. I've even consulted a client and said, what's going on at home, went over the files, and I said, it seems like there are a lot of things at home that need to change. So I'm very open and transparent because the schools absolutely need to do their due diligence, be supportive. But if there are issues in the environment foundationally that are stopping this child from being successful, that's where we need to hone in. So I'm not a, hey, let's go take your money. Let's do this. Let's make the school. No, because that's not going to fix. That's not a solution. The solution is, what is the root problem? How do we help those things? And how do we work with the school to fix those concerns? Not, you need to do it because I said so, because that's not going to help anything. When I leave, there's still going to be a problem. And I am definitely the one to tell parents, that's what you think. This is something that you didn't do. So now how do we fix it? What is the solution? Everything is figure outable. What is the solution to this problem? Because we can talk about it, we can talk in circles, but if this caused this to cause this, then that means we need to go back to the root cause. So that's what I'm supporting my parents, my schools, and this platform. I'm using it to be able to provide that support in different realms, in different spaces, and based on the experience that I have. Currently, our clinic is supporting the Department of Child Services. We work at juvenile centers. I go into jails. I go into juvenile centers and I assess people. I am in court often. I'm subpoenaed quite often. So I have a realm of understanding based off of what I've been exposed to. So this platform, it is definitely my baby, but it is a way for me to reach the masses. So stay tuned.